I'm here with former Marine intelligence officer who served in the former Soviet Union implementing arms control agreements. And from 91 to 98, he served as chief inspector for the United Nations in Iraq, leading the search for Iraq's prescribed weapons of mass destruction. He was later a vocal critic of the American decision to go to war with Iraq. He is also the author of 9 books, including his most recent Scorpion King, America's Suicidal Embrace of Nuclear Weapons from FDR to Trump. Please welcome Scott Ritter. Scott, thanks for making time.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm just going to go over the story that got you banned from Twitter, and then we'll talk about it. I just want to remind people that when we debunked the gas attacks in Syria at this show, the New York Times was telling you the exact opposite. So they were assuring you that their scientists had created virtually, they imagined a crime scene, and they created it digitally, and they told you that the gas attack came from Assad and it was definitely for real. Well, it turns out that was all made up, and the New York Times is never going to apologize for that, and that's how it goes. And so now people are using more New York Times to validate war crimes in the Ukraine war. Now, we know that the first casualty in any war is the truth, right? And that war crimes are usually committed on both sides. And so right now, here's Ali Veshi, who's been screaming for us to go to actual war, the United States soldiers to go into Ukraine and fight Russia. He says this, that's why he has a job at MSNBC. If he didn't have that opinion, they would fire him and he would be doing a YouTube show. If he was against the war, they would fire him. There is nobody on any of the networks except Tucker Carlson who will tell you the truth about what's happening in Ukraine. Isn't that interesting? So our Ali Veshi, he tweets out this. He says this remarkable New York Times investigation, remarkable. He's not skeptical at all of the New York Times, even though they've been wrong about everything when it comes to war in my lifetime. He says the remarkable New York Times investigation using satellite imagery disproves the Russian claim, amplified by U.S. conspiracy theorists, that somehow Ukrainians themselves killed or planted the dead bodies discovered in Bucha. So it's okay to think Russia did it. It's not okay to think someone else did it. That's a conspiracy. Just why? Because they don't like it. That's why that theory is a conspiracy, but their theory isn't. And he's saying that the New York Times, they investigated it themselves, and they got their satellite image from a shady defense contractor. I'll tell you that. And there's lots of other things. So I'm not saying this is real or not. I'm saying you should always be skeptical of a corporate news outlet that's claiming to report certainty about anything that's happening during a war, especially a war crime that feeds into the propaganda that our government is pushing. That's what a grown-up would do. That's not what Ali Veshi does, because he's paid to push manufacture consent for war. And he does it. He's doing it great. He's doing a great job. Even though the Pentagon can't independently confirm atrocities in Ukraine's Bucha, the Pentagon can't confirm it, but Ari Veshi knows the New York Times. They're remarkable. Okay. And by the way, here's Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone showing you that reports of a Russian massacre of scores of civilians in a town of Bucha also contain suspicious details suggesting a pattern of information manipulation aimed at triggering Western military intervention. So just like the gas attacks in Syria were the one thing they knew would trigger the United States to bomb Syria, that's why they did that false flag. It still says on my Wikipedia page that that's a conspiracy that I pushed, even though we debunked it. So same thing here. How can we get the United States involved direct militarily? We have to show war crimes. That's what this tweet is saying. And here's the tweet that you made that Twitter didn't like. You said the Ukrainian National Police committed numerous crimes against humanity in Bucha. Biden, in seeking to shift blame for the Bucha murders onto Russia, is guilty of aiding and abetting these crimes. Congratulations, America. We've created yet another presidential war criminal. As Chomsky has proven, every president since World War II is a war criminal. He's proven that. Okay. Here's what Scott Ritter got from Twitter. it said, "Hello, Scott Ritter. Your account, Real Scott Ritter, has been suspended for violating Twitter rules, specifically for violating our rules against abuse and harassment." What? That doesn't make sense at all. He's not abusing or harassing anyone. He's giving an opinion about a narrative surrounding a war crime. Okay. Then he got reinstated. And Scott Ritter, a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and UN weapons inspector in Iraq in the 90s, has had his Twitter account reinstated after he was suspended from the platform for calling U.S. President Joe Biden a war criminal in Ukraine. Oh, is that what the abuse? That's what? Oh, my. You can't call it. Last weekend, Ukrainian officials reported that discovery of hundreds of dead civilians in Bucha, 15 miles northwest of Kiev, a city once held by Russian troops. Moved to tears, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of committing a genocide in Bucha on his visit to the city on Monday. The United States and many other countries have also condemned Russia. The offending tweet by Ritter was the Ukrainian national. I showed you what it was. These claims were unsubstantiated. But the other ones are also unsubstantiated. The official line is also unsubstantiated. Why does the official line not get censored, but a counter narrative to the establishment status quo propaganda? Okay. These claims are unsubstantiated, and it is widely thought that Russian forces are responsible. It's widely thought. It's not confirmed. It says thought. Meaning they don't know for sure. Twitter responded to that tweet saying that his account had been violating our rules of abuse and harassment. Commenting on being reinstated, Ritter tweeted late Wednesday night, "No official word from Twitter about what the problem was or why it was resolved, but I'm sure they took notice at the concern expressed by many of you here on Twitter. Thanks for speaking up in defense of free speech. Good night." Who is Scott Ritter? Well, we know. We already told you. In 1998, this is interesting. Let's say that he quit the UN inspector team for weapons of mass destruction in 1998, claiming that President Bill Clinton was too easy on Saddam Hussein. He criticized the Iraq dictator's government for misleading inspectors and scamming the international community. His position on WMDs in Iraq changed significantly after he left the Middle Eastern country in 1998, initially saying Hussein had not nearly disarmed in 1998 before ruling out WMDs there, Time reported. What Scott Ritter tweeted contained no call for abuse or harassment of any individuals. He didn't wish or hope that anyone experienced physical harm. He did express a dissenting view, and this shows how Twitter rules can be twisted to silence U.S. foreign policy critics. Twitter's guideline against denying mass casualty events took place, so you're not allowed to say if there was a big mass casualty, you can't say it was a hoax, it didn't happen. That's part of Twitter's rule against abuse and harassment. That is what led to the suspension. Here is what the rule says, and then you can see what Scott Ritter tweeted. The rule says we prohibit content that denies the mass murder of other mass casualty events took place, where we can verify that the event occurred, and when the content is shared with abusive intent. This may include references to such an event as a hoax or claims that victims or survivors are fake or actors. It includes, but is not limited to, events like the Holocaust, school shootings, terrorist attacks, and natural disasters. Well, none of the things you said in there did any of that. You confirmed that it was all real. You just had a different idea of how it happened. So based on the tweet, Ritter isn't denying a mass casualty event took place. He believes it was the Ukrainian National Police and not Russian military forces, but it doesn't seem like he is doing so with any abusive intent. Ritter didn't refer to the crimes as a hoax. While the New York Times clearly believes what is known points to Russia being behind atrocities in Bucha, editors acknowledge in their calls for an investigation that it could be that Ukrainian troops committed crimes. But the New York Times is safe from censorship. There it is. Here it is. Russia, for the record, says the atrocities in Bucha are all staged, and it may well be the investigators will find evidence of atrocities committed by Ukrainian troops against Russians or collaborators. All the more reason to conduct a thorough accounting. So they're saying the exact same thing that Scott Ritter said on Twitter. They're saying it in the New York Times, and he got, okay. So did the Pentagon deny mass casualty event because they told the media they could not independently confirm this? Just recognize how Twitter guidelines can be used incorrectly applied and are prone to misuse and manipulation. And Matt Taibbi says, I remember when Alex Jones was removed, most mainstream media critics said not to worry. Censorship would only ever apply to extreme raging assholes like Alex Jones. Now almost every day, independent media figures face suspensions or deletions, even if their content is accurate. Now, I just want to show one thing. This happened again just before we came to air. You got another one, and it's for this tweet. You said the Marines, the Marines more Iraqis in Haditha than the Russians killed Ukrainians in Bucha. For the simple fact that Haditha wasn't a case of false flag mass murder, Bucha, on the other hand. So they got you for that too, and they used abuse and harassment again. They used that same thing. So let's bring in Scott Ritter to talk about this. What would you like to say about this?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. I'm sitting thousands of miles away removed from the incident. I'm not an on-scene investigator, and I am a prisoner to the data that presents itself generally online. The data so far has been unequivocal, in my opinion. The initial film shown by the Ukrainian government to sustain their allegations of a Russian crime showed dead bodies on a road, dead bodies that had white armbands. That generally speaks to pro-Russian sympathies, dead bodies that had Russian dry ration packages near them. Those are the green boxes with the white star that the Russians give out for humanitarian purposes. And the bodies that didn't have the white armband were bound behind their backs using the white cloth that appears to be the white armbands. So right off the bat, my initial take was these are pro-Russian Ukrainians or ethnic Russians who are moving in a direction toward Russian lines. The Russians had evacuated. These bodies are heading in a northerly direction. So it tells me they're moving in that direction. Did the Russians kill them? We don't know at this point. But the first thing is a physical examination of the body. I've been around a lot of dead bodies. Just here to tell you that that's an unfortunate reality. These bodies were freshly killed. I'm not talking about within hours, but definitely within days of the event. The New York Times came out later with a story that showed the satellite imagery saying that the bodies were killed on March 19th. You will not find a single medical forensic investigator, I challenge you, that'll tell you that a body killed on March 19th, left in the open like that, will present itself in that fashion on April 2nd. Bodies discolor, they bloat, and then the internal organs begin to liquefy, the bodies burst, and by the second week, you're going to be sitting in a pool of putrid, disgusting liquid. That's what a decomposing body looks like. Those were not decomposing bodies. Those are freshly killed bodies. So that's that. Now, who killed them? We don't know, except that a Ukrainian politician, a female in uniform, got on the social media network and local television on April 1st and warned the population, stay at home. There is a cleansing operation underway. Do not be afraid. Stay at home. There is a cleansing, and she said it multiple times. Now, what does cleansing operation mean? Fortunately, we have the Ukrainian National Police put on their website that says we are conducting a cleansing operation in Bucha, and we are targeting Russian collaborators and Russian saboteurs, meaning people wearing the white armbands. So they say that. And then the Russian National Police unit, and this is an important piece of peripheral evidence, is called the Safari unit. Later on, the Ukrainian government said the Russians carried out a safari action hunting down. And I'm like, well, why did you use that one? Well, because your unit's called Safari. And a member of this Safari unit was a right-wing Azov battalion-related Nazi unit who posted a video showing one of its troops asking its commanders, they're not wearing the blue armband for Ukrainian sympathizers. Can I shoot them? And the guy said, expletive deleted, yes. So when I look at the totality of this data that presents itself, my initial take is it's more likely than not that the Ukrainian National Police carried out this event. We have a statement from them saying that they are carrying out a cleansing operation. Clearly, there's intent to kill Russian, what they call collaborators, people who receive the Russian rations. But still, I withheld judgment. Then the president came out, made his statement, blaming Russia, saying straight out, Russia did it. Putin's a war criminal. I'm somebody who served in the military. He's my commander in chief. He would have been. I give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the president was briefed on something I'm not aware of. Therefore, I'll hold off. But then the Pentagon comes right out and says, nah, we ain't got nothing. We got nothing to prove it. So now the president's acting on media information and he's making a judgment. So I simply put out a tweet that said, Ukrainian National Police did this. And the president, and I was very careful. This took me 40 minutes to write this tweet that got me banned because I had to research it. And I looked up the Nuremberg tribunals. And when you seek to tie a mass casualty event, murder, and shift blame on the other, you are guilty of a crime against the peace. And so I said, the president is guilty of a war crime. These are factual statements based upon my opinion, derived from an analysis of open source information. Can someone come out and say, no, we now have definitive proof that the Russians did it? And I would say, good, prosecute them. I'm not here to make a case for anybody. I'm just simply saying that the data that has presented itself, it does not support prima facie Russian guilt.
And so what do you think? So that, by the way, so if you were wondering how they were going to censor people telling the truth about war, like with the Iraq war, it was before YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and those things. Now we have them, and now we found out how they're going to do it. They're going to say this, you're going against our abuse and harassment. So now we know how this is how they're doing it. And so if anything I say actually makes a difference, they'll just censor it. Or they'll call it, like they still have on Wikipedia, CNN did an article about me calling me a conspiracy theorist because I pushed the gas attacks hoax in Syria. It wasn't, I was debunking your false flag hoax. I was debunking it. Right. And so, but they'll never correct that. And now I never even get to edit my own Wikipedia page. It's all edited by people from the intelligence community. It's not edited by me. And so the intelligence community is embedded in Wikipedia, and they won't let me or anybody tell the truth about anything that they don't want you to tell the truth about. So that's why Wikipedia is bullshit on most things, on a lot of things, and certainly when it comes to individuals. So but here it is. So now you know how they're doing it. Now, what do you think in this tweet? Because this tweet was, you said this
tweet's missing a word. First of all, the tweet from Matt Gallagher, who is a journalist, his tweet has now been deleted. Doesn't exist anymore. So I was unable to go up and provide an example.
Okay.
But his tweet suggested that that the U.S. military in Iraq didn't commit any crimes similar to what the Russians have committed in Bucha.
Oh, come on.
So what I did, and I'm a Marine who loves the Marines. You got to understand how much I worship the Marine Corps. But my Marines killed 26 innocent civilians in Haditha. And the words it says that Marines killed more Iraqis in Haditha. They murdered 26 Iraqis in Haditha. It wasn't a false flag, and that was the other point I was making. It was a real deal. We prosecuted them. They killed more Iraqis in Haditha than the Russians killed Ukrainians in Bucha, for the simple fact that Haditha wasn't a false flag, mass murder, and Bucha, on the other hand, was a false flag. Again, these are all statements that are reasonably attached to sound assessment of available fact. They're not denying anything. It's simply refuting a ridiculous statement made by Matt Gallagher that the United States was incapable of committing the kind of crimes that Russia has been accused of.
So you're just pointing out a fact from the Iraq War, and I mean, you didn't even make an assertion that their narrative around Bucha is false. You didn't even do that in that tweet. You just made told a fact, and they deleted you for that. Or they're banning you from your account for that.
Well, what they said is when I appealed it, they said that it appears that this tweet here is related to your previous case and will be considered as part of your previous case. And I wrote back and said, you absolved me of my previous case and reinstated me, so you should clearly dismiss this one as well. Well, it's been 2 days, and no, they haven't responded.
Why do they
It
give?
makes no sense.
Isn't it funny that a bureaucrat at Twitter would give a shit about a weapons inspector making an assessment about something that happened? Why would they give a shit? Why would somebody at Twitter care or try to? I mean, like they have an expert at Twitter about Ukraine that does more about it than you. I mean, it's just crazy. Why would they care?
I think the big problem with Twitter is that they've fallen under the pressure put forward by the U.S. government and U.S. Congress about what they call pro-Russian links. Apparently, because I publish, among the many places I publish articles with RT, Russia Today. I'm labeled a pro-Russian or a Russian sympathizer. And of course, Twitter has been pressured by Congress to eliminate disinformation coming from Russian sources. So apparently I'm a Russian source spreading disinformation, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've been singled out. I mean, they're wrong. I'm not a Russian source. I'm a loyal, patriotic American who served my country in times of war. And I'm not spreading disinformation. I think we've established that I try to make everything I assert fact-based. But according to Twitter, who's under pressure from Congress to be seen as implementing rules that restrict the dissemination of Russian-based disinformation, these tweets fall into that category.
All right. Well, it turns out Elon Musk is not going to take that seat on the board because he would have to act. I don't know why. But the fact is he's not taking it. People are speculating why, but it doesn't matter. He's not taking it, which sucks for people like you and me, because I thought Elon Musk made that purchase so he could be on the board, so he could reinstate free speech on Twitter. That's what I thought the whole point of him doing that. Was he really just investing his money in Twitter? That's what he's doing? That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, all I know is that, as you alluded earlier, had I made the statements in 2002 that I did about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which were proven 100% correct, had I tweeted them in 2002, under Twitter's rules today, I'd have been banned for spreading disinformation.
Yes. Yeah. And so, why is that coming? Okay, it's good. So we were having a little feedback there.
Oh, sorry.
So no problem. So yeah, that's you would have been deleted or suspended from your account, called misinformation because the New York Times and the government was saying one thing and you were saying, no, they're wrong. So now you're not allowed to disagree with the government on social media. And it's the opposite of the promise of the internet. The internet was supposed to be, now it's going to be democracy. Everybody gets to have a voice. And they're like, no, you don't. And they figured out a way to co-opt it. Like, I remember when anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's the government being captured by the corporations they're supposed to be regulating, and the corporations afraid of being regulated by the government, so they do their bidding right away. And so, I mean, that's why Facebook and Twitter, they're in bed with the intelligence communities, and they're doing the bidding of the White House at Facebook, that's for sure. And they're afraid, they don't want to be regulated by the government, and so they do all this preemptive censoring, so to try to get rid of that. Who cares? I would say let the government just start doing it. Then you could fight back in court. Now you're just doing it yourself anyway. What's the point? Let the government step in and to start censoring, and then you can. But that's not how it works, right? Because it's all one big happy family. The donor class picks the politicians, and the donor class wants them to censor. Do you see what's happening? The donor class is the military-industrial complex. The donor class is Wall Street. They want these wars to happen. They don't want the truth to come out, and so that's why it's all being controlled by a handful of people. I mean, that's the media certainly is. And what else do you know? And those people who own the media, you don't think they run the government? Of course they do. Anything I'd say there you'd like to push back on?
I don't want to push back. I want to highlight what you said about freedom of speech. I mean, look, the First Amendment clearly talks about, congressional legislation. Congress shall not pass laws that interfere with free speech. And so people say, well, Twitter is enforcing its own rules. But when those rules are created from pressure from Congress, that Congress will regulate, It directly implicates our constitutional First Amendment rights. And even if it doesn't, just on a principle basis, we're supposed to be about, informed debate, dialogue, and discussion. I think that's one of the things that Twitter was invaluable for. People could put ideas out there and have an interaction with other people about the pros and cons of these ideas. And from that comes a better informed electorate who can hold their elected officials accountable for what they do in our name. And that's what a democracy is supposed to be. And Twitter doesn't understand that what it's doing here is not defending democracy, because that's the pressure that's put on it by Congress to keep disinformation out. It's a direct frontal assault on democracy, weakening the ability of the average American citizen to access different points of view. If we all drink from the same water trough, the mainstream media, we only get one point of view.
We're going to get another Iraq war.
And we'll get another Iraq war. But in this case, the enemy has nuclear weapons. So it would be a very short war.
And so I always have to, because a lot of people who are bootlickers like to say, well, they're Twitter or Facebook, or they're a private company, and they you don't have a right to that. That's not free speech. That's a private company. Yeah, they're just a private. YouTube and Google, they're just a private company that's the size of a country. that has the wealth of a country. It's not the same. But I'm against censorship, and I've said this before, in the spirit that comes out of the Enlightenment, which is where the anti-censor. So you're against censorship no matter where it comes from, whether it comes from the state, whether it comes from the church, or whether it comes from a corporation. So that's why you got to be against censorship. And now, I hate having to make the same case over and over, but the town hall is now digital, right? It's now virtual. It's now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. These are the new town squares. And so these should be now considered, and by the way, they're monopolies. And so they should be considered monopolies, and that should be regulated. And then free speech laws that are in the Constitution should apply to these town squares. And that's not what they're doing. That's what should be happening. Just like AT&T can't turn off your phone service if they don't like the stuff you're saying on your phone calls. They shouldn't be able to turn off your YouTube channel, your Twitter, or your Facebook just because they don't like what you're saying there. They have to prove you broke a law. And if you haven't broken a law, they shouldn't be able to erase you from society, because that's what dictatorships do. That's what they erase you. That's what I was always read and taught. That's what communists do. They erase you as you become a non-person. That's what they can do to you now. That's what they try to do to Alex Jones. Make him a non-person. If they can get you off Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, then you don't exist anymore. And that's why we need this kind of protection. We should make those places town squares, and we should apply the First Amendment to them. We should regulate them. That's not going to happen. It probably will never happen, because the people who have to make that happen are the same people who get the donations from those people so that's why it's not going to happen. The government is captured and owned by big corporations, which is why we live in this place we live in right now, which is why we're currently occupying a third of Syria, the oil fields, committing a genocide in Yemen where over 500,000 people have died. But nobody cares about any of that. They only care about Ukraine, which we provoked. And they don't know anything about how we got there. So that's what you get. That's the danger of having 70% of the American public get their news and information from Google or Facebook. That's the problem with that. Now we live in a completely corrupted society where the government is owned by a handful of billionaires and does their bidding and tells their media to lie to everybody else, and it shuts up critics who are telling the truth, like Scott Ritter. Scott, anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you very much for helping me not disappear.
Okay, well, keep us informed about your Twitter account, and we'll see what happens. And it might not be a make or break for your life, but it is a make or break for our society that we have to have free speech, especially now. Especially you see the narratives around COVID, you see the narratives around war, you see the narratives around economics. They gave $5 trillion to the richest people at the beginning of COVID, and they fucked you for 2 straight years. They're not doing anything for you. They wouldn't even give you a $2,000 check, and now they're pissing in your face and they're trying to convince you it's raining. But anyway, I could go on and on all day. Scott Ritter, everybody check out his Twitter account when it gets back reinstated. Do you have a Substack or anything like that?
No, I'm new to this whole social media thing.
Okay. All right, Scott. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again later.
Thanks a lot.
Come see a live stand-up show or be in Orlando, Tampa, Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Las Vegas, Omaha, Des Moines, everywhere. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for our live show tickets. Also, become a premium member and get access to all our extra stuff and help support the show. See you at a live show. Single tickets now available. Single tickets available.